Okay, so good morning, everybody. Welcome to our marketing session for Advisor Training Week. We are going to run through different ideas and options for marketing things for your group on campus, whether it's the group itself, trying to find new members, maybe it's events, whatever it might be. I just have some tips and tricks and maybe some new ideas for you all when it comes to the theme of marketing. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Emily Javitt. I'm the Assistant Director of Leadership. I also support non-traditional students. I'm the one that was sending out all the emails about Advisor Training Week. So thank you all for either being here or watching. Let's go ahead. Agenda for today. I had a survey, but I'm going to be honest with everyone. I haven't had time to finish it. So we're going to skip that part. I'm going to talk about marketing specifically at the Cub. And I call that building out because it's such a centralized location on this campus for our students. And there's a lot of, they use this space for a lot of different things. And there's a lot of options in the Cub. I'm going to talk about marketing at SHIP in general, just across campus, and then some tools and tips. And then we'll have time at the end for questions or suggestions. So let's get started. Like I said, I'm going to be honest, I didn't finish it. It's the first week of class. It's been a little crazy. But let's talk about marketing across campus in general. So these are just like the general the bigger pieces when it comes to marketing. So number one, social media. I would argue that is the biggest number one way for your group to get its name out there, because let's be honest, every single student is on social media. They know how to use it, and they spend the most time in the day. If they're not in the classroom, they're probably on social media. So that to me is a huge piece of getting a group out there, getting your events out there, is building that social media presence. And we'll talk a little bit more about social media later. Also flyers, they're a little bit old school now, but they still work. They're all over campus, and they're definitely a really good way. If you can make it pop or you can hang it in very strategic areas, you can really get a lot of students' attention that way. Faculty and staff, we need to use each other to help market things out, to get support for our events, for our groups. I'll talk about that a little bit later too. And finally, just building a campus presence. I think that there's a lot of groups on this campus who don't really have to market because they've been here for a while, they've made a name for themselves, and when someone hears it, they know what to expect. The best example I can think of is APB, the Activities Programming Board. Everyone knows what to expect at an APB event. Everyone knows how to recognize an APB flyer because they're consistent and they do a lot. And I know that's very different than most of the other student groups, but I could easily see a group with 10 members being consistent and working hard and getting your name out there, and everyone's going to know who you are. So those are like 4 big ideas when it comes to marketing in general. So now if we switch gears to think about the Cub, with the number one thing I want to remind everyone about is the Project Center, which is here in the Cub. It's on the 2nd floor. I actually oversee this space. And for those of you who don't know, it is a place for students to come and create flyers, great wall posters, buttons, if they need markers for things, scissors, whatever. Like if they want to create quarter sheets, we got paper cutters. We have all sorts of resources for students to create anything that they might need to market themselves out. So the Project Center there's a request form on ShipLink. If you just go on ShipLink and search Project Center, it comes right up. It's the first survey. It's normally called like the fall request form or something similar to that. And the services in the Project Center are free to all student groups until you reach a certain quota. I can't remember specific numbers. I think it's like after 100 flyers, then you start paying for it. But most student groups never quite reach there. So most of the services are free. We have student workers who run that space. So when requests are submitted, they print the flyers, they print out posters, they'll do the cutting if you need. That's kind of the point of the request form is you tell us what you want, we got it for you. If students want to come in and do it themselves, they are also more than welcome to do that. So the Project Center is a great resource for students when it comes to marketing. If you have any questions about the Project Center ever, feel free to shoot me an email and I'm more than happy to answer it because like I said, that's something that I oversee on campus. The second one kind of goes with the project center. So for the idea of the Great Wall posters, for those of you who don't know, in the Cub, there's this big blank wall that we can hang up 3 foot by 4 foot flyers. And they get printed in the project center and then hung up. And I'm going to be honest, you know, I work in the Cub. Anytime I walk by, there are students who are stopping and looking at the Great Wall because they know that's where they can find out about events. Even if your group isn't hosting an event, but you wanted to have an info session, or you just wanted to say like, hey, are you interested in joining such and such group? You could create a flyer and get it printed out, and it can get hung on the wall. And Great Walls, like I said, request through the project center. If you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to me as well. And like I've talked about already, just the idea of flyers in general. You can hang them in the Cub. You just have to take them to the information desk on the ground floor, and they stamp them with a date so that they can keep the flyers tidy and that sort of thing. So get them approved, and the Cub workers will hang them up. So you don't even have to walk around unless you really want to. Another idea for the Cub when it comes to flyers, there's a lot of offices in here. So if you wanted to like take some flyers around, stop by the Career Center, stop by the Pride Center and drop some off, they all have spaces that they can hang flyers up. And you could easily, you know, market your group or your event out that way. The third one, I talked about this in Advising 101 if anyone was there, but tabling is a great way, one, to get your students out and about, and two, to recruit other students to your organization or to let them know about events. So for anyone who might not be familiar, the idea of tabling, you set up a table, you have some representatives there. Anyone who walks by, you're like, hey, you want to learn more about this group? Or hey, are you interested in coming to this event? It's low cost, it's free, honestly, unless you purchase for things to be on your table. I like to do them with students because it's kind of a bonding event for the students who are representing the group. You know, they have to sit with each other for a couple of hours. So they get to talking and they get to knowing each other. And then they get to meet a lot of students who walk by. Tabling the past year was obviously a little bit weird. There were a lot of days there was nobody in the Cub and it was real quiet. But even this first week here, it's like, it's a madhouse. So if you wanted to do some tabling, you could easily hit a ton of students, especially in like the midday hours around lunchtime. I think the most popular tabling time is like 11 to 1 or like 12 to 2, something like that. If you wanted to request a table in the Cub, you just go on the events, I forget what it's like, events management system website, EMS, and you can request the table there. If you have any questions about that, just shoot me an email or something in the chat and I can send you the link to that. Any staff or faculty is able to go in there and request spaces. I do not think that students are able to. Tabling, I think, is also available other places on campus, but I'm not quite as familiar with how those processes would work. The fourth thing when it comes to the Cub, we have our big amphitheater outside. And even though right now during the summer, it just sucks up heat, it's a really nice space during better weather because it's big, it's outdoors, it's nice, it's all concrete. There's lots of sitting area. There's a big tent that's up. And that's a really fun place to do some tabling if you wanted to, but also because it's all concrete, we've had groups have major success by chalking the space, you know, writing out like your group's name and like what you're all about, drawing some images, really catching people's eye. And as they're walking by, they're like, oh my gosh, I've never heard of that group. Maybe I want to join. It's also a really great space to do events. And if you wanted to have your group do an event that's just chalking the space, that's great. I think when it comes to that sort of thing, you just have to email Raven Francis, who is the Assistant Director of Operations, and just let her know you're doing it. The chalking policy is pretty straightforward. You just can't chalk anywhere that like the rain can't hit. So vertical spaces or like under certain roofs, because we want to make sure that it washes away naturally. So the amphitheater is a great space to think about. And finally, there's lots of newsletters that go out to our students. So if this was something, you know, if you wanted to create like that, like I mentioned, that flyer that's like, hey, want to join this group, or hey, we have an event, you can send them to the people who oversee these newsletters and they'll get sent out to all these students. The biggest one that I know of is On the Horizon, which I believe goes out to every undergraduate student. And maybe faculty and staff. And the email for that, you just email Lisa Laughlin, who's over in the SGA office, or the email that you can send the flyer to is SNE ship.edu, and just send it to them and they'll get it in the next one. And like I said, it goes out to lots of students. Also, if you know of anyone who sends out newsletters, maybe just ask them if you can throw a flyer in or some information in. I know I send out a newsletter to all non-traditional students every week. So if there was ever anything you wanted me to share with them, so just kind of keeping your ear out for those sorts of things. Okay, that was a lot, but that's all the things that I can think of when it comes to the Cub specifically and marketing for your student group. Like I mentioned, there's a lot here. There's a lot that you can do. So that's the Cub. So now other areas, residence halls are a really obvious space to advertise things for your group. So in, I think every residence hall, there are TVs that they can flash flyers across. So while students are standing, waiting for the elevator, or they're waiting for their friend, they're looking at these screens and seeing flyers. So just send them to, I would assume anyone in Res Life. I normally send them to Jen Milburn, and they just throw them up on the screen. Also flyers, if you print out flyers, you can drop some off in the Housing and Res Life office and they will disperse them among the res halls, and the RAs and the RDs will hang them up. So if you prefer to do it the paper way, that's another option. And finally, RAs, they're a great way to market out your events to students and your group. They're talking to their students all the time. They're in the res halls, they're on the floors. They have big group chats that they can send things to. So I like to utilize them, especially if it's an event I'm a little worried about attendance at. I'll send it to a bunch of RAs and ask if they could share it out. So that's res halls. Another thing to think about, academic spaces. In those buildings, you have bulletin boards that you can hang flyers on. I like to reach out to the FYE faculty for things, if there's events or groups, like for the SIS fair this afternoon, I like to share that with the FYE faculty because they can just hit a pretty massive group, and that class isn't so rigid. So it kind of makes sense to throw in, some events and some groups for students. And then also, if there's academic departments that maybe are related to your group, or you can see a natural partnership, get connected, because then you have a whole new world of students and you have some other faculty who can, help support your group. Finally, the Slate, which is our newspaper on campus. I'm pretty sure, I've never done it, so that's why I'm saying I'm pretty sure, but you can just go on their website and there's an option to submit a tip or submit an article. And if you go on there, I'm sure that if you reached out to the Slate and they would write an article about your group, they would post a flyer about your event. They're always looking for content. So that might be a great way to get your information out there. They have both their paper version and their digital version. So even if students, aren't walking around picking up a newspaper, they might still see it if they're on the Slate's website. So that's just some other ideas for marketing around campus. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about social media. I think it's such a big presence in our world today that it deserves its own little section. And these are kind of from my own experience and from the students I work with. These are some of the things I've picked up. So Instagram is like the big one now. It used to be Facebook, and I think now it's Instagram. Everyone's on Instagram. They follow each other. They follow groups. They follow all these university offices. It's just like the place to be on social media. And I recommend, your group creating an account and just starting, even if you don't have anything to post, just start following other groups, following offices, other students, just to sort of start building your presence. When it comes to Instagram, I think, and like building your name on Instagram, two things are important: consistency and themes. So posting pretty regularly. There's awesome websites you can use nowadays where you can schedule out months in advance different posts on social media, and you do it all in like an hour, and then you're done for the semester. Things like Hootsuite, that's a really awesome one to use. So you don't have to think about it, because I know most of us don't have time to sit down and post something on Instagram. But if you take an hour and get things posted, and then in 3 weeks, it'll appear on your Instagram, which is really great. But to really have a presence, you need to be posting pretty regularly. I also recommend like a theme, whether it's a color scheme or a font scheme, or just like what you're posting is pretty regular and pretty in the same world. It makes your page look prettier, which in the world of marketing and advertising and social media, that's like something that's really important. Another great thing about Instagram is if your group were to create a page, students can easily message you through the app. So they don't have to worry about going and finding an email and sending an email. They can just message you right there like, hey, video game group, I'm interested in joining. How do I do that? And if you have students who have access to that, they can just answer, be like, hey, we actually have a meeting tomorrow. Why don't you stop by? So that makes it a really convenient way to connect with other people. YouTube and TikTok are great platforms if you have a lot of content that you want to post. So I don't oversee too many groups who use these because they're doing a lot of things in person and they don't have a lot of like things that they're creating. But that might not be true for your group. You might want to like start vlogging, which is the videos of your day, the day in your life, and you're posting that. Or if you want to make TikToks with your different group members or at your events or whatever. The Pride Center actually has a really awesome TikTok account, and they've had some videos go pretty viral, I would say. So those are a little bit more of a time commitment, but there's something to think about if you want to be a little different and really want to build that social media presence. And finally, Facebook and Snapchat. As I mentioned earlier, Facebook's kind of dying out, I think, with the students we have nowadays. And Snapchat isn't really something that they want infiltrated by their university. We have found that in a couple of different scenarios there, that they like to keep that personal with their friends. They don't want the university following them on Snapchat. They don't want to snap the university, that sort of thing. So I don't necessarily think that these are worth your time anymore unless it makes sense for your group, because Facebook does have a lot of those conveniences like messaging and building relationships and that sort of thing. But like I said, a lot of our students really aren't even on it anymore. So I have here a picture of when it comes to Instagram, this is what I'm talking about when I say consistency and theme. So this is our ship admissions page. It's not a student group page, but this one is the best example. So you can see there's kind of like a color scheme. They have like an official logo there. They have a really nice bio. And then if you look at the 3 photos posted below, the fonts that they use are the same. So it looks really nice. And they're posting pictures of Shippensburg. So when you scroll through their Instagram, you know what they are, you know what they're doing. And I just really think that this is a nice example of what you should look for your Instagram page. So yeah, I just wanted to share that with you all to kind of get that going. So that's all I really have for marketing. There's a lot of different ways, and I'm sure I missed them, and I'm not a marketing person either. So I don't have a lot of details for other things, but that's kind of where the experiences I've had and the successes I've had when it comes to that. There's my phone number and my email. If you have any questions about anything, like I said, Project Center, Great Walls, those sorts of things, I'm more than happy to help with. If you want to send stuff to newsletters, let me know and I can shoot you the link to send stuff there. So that is all I have for you today. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Well, with that said, thank you, everyone. We have another session later this afternoon, student group logistics with the SGA Vice President of Student Groups to go over things like constitutions and like liability and travel and all those fun things that I don't know very much about. So I hope to see you there and have a great rest of your afternoon.